I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Councilor Cody.
Here.
Councilor Kraft.
Here.
Councilor LaRochelle.
Here.
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
Councilor Mason.
Here.
Councilor Pomelo.
Here.
And Councilor Bowie is here. Okay, first item, Twyla, please.
Is under public hearings, property assessed clean energy, PACE PACE ordinance.
I will open that public hearing. Any comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Give me a brief description of what we're talking about.
This is a program that the legislature voted on last year. It's a program for energy efficiency for residential homes. We have to pass an ordinance in order for us to offer it to the residents of Lisbon. All we do is promote the program. It is managed by a third party that is through the efficiency main, so it's for weatherization and things like that. It's a loan program, basically, with low interest. And
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing. Next item, please.
Is a moratorium ordinance prohibiting marijuana dispensary facilities.
I will open that public hearing. Any comments from the public? Chief Brooks.
Thank you, sir. I'm against it. No, I just wanted to, I wasn't able to be at your last meeting, and in doing some research and reaching out to agencies across the country, I sent a communication to California Department of Public Safety and also to the same entity in Colorado, states that have medical marijuana dispensaries, and quickly learned that Uniform Crime Reporting Standards, UCR, as we know them today, have no mechanism to count crimes that are associated with medical marijuana dispensaries. Matter of fact, you really can't count a crime that you think is linked to, you know, this pot house or this drinking house or something like that. It's the specific crime that's counted. We since then have sent communications to at least a half a dozen or more law enforcement agencies in California, Colorado, and New Mexico to see if those individual agencies, if their crime analysts are maintaining some type of statistical records on dispensaries, and we have yet to get any response back from them officially. My gut's telling me they really don't. But if you had the opportunity to go online to research this topic, there's a lot of interesting reading out there. And being the cop, I'll read the cop's version. Denver Post, the Denver Police Department analysis estimates that medical marijuana dispensaries in the city were robbed or burglarized at a lower rate last year than either banks or liquor stores. The findings were a projection of robbery and burglary rates. Again, they didn't have fine stats. Another comment on that article is that, of course, highlight it and didn't bring it. There was a captain on the Denver Police Department that made it clear that, you know, law enforcement doesn't support them, and we don't. However, there's no firm statistical data that they could put their fingers on to say that because it's there, this is what's happening. Another article out of the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco police chief, George Gascon. He goes on and on making all kinds of accusations, but said that he cites serious crimes such as robbery and homicide occurring in the vicinity of medical marijuana dispensaries, along with loitering, littering, and double parking. The report also provided numbers of crimes around existing dispensaries. So again, they can't link the crime to the dispensary, though there may be crime that's around the dispensary. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the captain. I thought it was Denver at San Francisco. The captain, Denise Schmidt, is not for it and said it would increase crime. However, there's a lot of information out there, and I don't think it either proves or disproves an increase in crime. So, said one thing, then said something else later. And again, I should have asterisked this before I started. This is Lisbon, and we can't find anything on small town Maine as far as anything like this. So that's why you're hearing from Denver and San Francisco. Now you're going to hear from Los Angeles. That's in California. Los Angeles County Sheriff has escalated his war of words against medical marijuana, saying as many as 97% operate as criminal enterprises. They dole out pot to people with no medical need for it. And this is a sheriff. Critics, also goes on to say that Baca presented no evidence to support his claim. Sounds familiar. Critics said his claims about the dispensaries were politically motivated and untrue. Yeah. And it just goes on to say that, again, there's no specific statistical data that they may be in the area, they may be in the neighborhood, but as far as the dispensary itself goes, it's not there. This article in Los Angeles was on to claim that they're using Mexican marijuana, which they're not supposed to. But again, nothing substantiated. And again, Los Angeles is not Lisbon by far. There have been a number of homicides in Los Angeles that I think 2 of them were medical marijuana dispensary deliveries. So, and I don't believe Maine is talking about getting into delivery. I hadn't heard that. But those are the kind of things that we found. Again, we have no information at all that has come back from the half a dozen or so agencies that we sent direct emails to. We went online, found where California's loaded with them. They're all over California. But we tried to find some of the smaller communities and communicate with them to see what they've got, and we're not getting anything back yet. When I do, I'll quickly pass it on, but that's it right now.
May I ask a question? The chief? If,
Actually, no, because it's a
okay.
public hearing. You can ask your
All right.
question when we get into the,
It's really not that big of a deal, so.
Right.
We're good.
any other comments from the public? Michelle?
Michelle Trammell. I, as well, did my research. I have the first article that Chief Brooks first discussed, but I also dug a little deeper. What I found from, and the source information, both of them came from law enforcement agencies. The first one was a survey of law enforcement agencies in Colorado. The other one, 2009 California Police Chiefs Association. In Colorado, through a survey of law enforcement agencies in Colorado, Colorado Drug Investigators Association reported the marijuana dispensaries attract or cause numerous ancillary social problems as byproducts of their operation. Some of these are, and this is consistent for both, so I'll just highlight a couple of them because they're on both of them. Decreased quality of life in deteriorating neighborhoods, both business and residential. That one stuck out more importantly because of what we are supposed to, and you guys represent for Lisbon, which is the betterment of our community. Murders, kidnapping, burglaries, traffic noise, drug dealing. As well for California, and this is the one that's directly from the Police Chiefs Association and their website. Armed robberies, murders, burglaries, traffic noise, organized crime, money laundering, firearms, loss of business tax revenue. I think those are pretty serious. I don't think I really need to go on more. It's information that I found on both. It's out online. Again, when I raised the issue about Googling the town of Lisbon, all I had to do was Google it, and it popped right up. And it's 2009 stats. Obviously 2010 is not out there, and I will gladly provide you with this so you can see exactly where it pulled, and it gives you the source information. Like I said, I found the other article But when I dug a little bit deeper, aside from the article that came up from the Denver Post, which talked about the analysis, Denver pot shops robbery rate lower than banks, I kind of knew that there was probably more out there, and I had looked a little bit further, and again, that's where this all came from. I mean, it's direct out there, black and white for everybody to read. It's very alarming that it duly decreased the quality of life in both of the surveys. I mean, that was a dual thing, and I found that to be quite alarming, and I just don't want that to be what the Google search is for the town of Lisbon. So, again, I guess I stand for the same thing I said before, that I just don't think it's a good idea. I'm not saying that we should miss out on something financially that would benefit us. I think this would be more devastating than the financial loss. So if you want the information, I'll gladly give it to you so you have it, so you can see where I pulled the information from.
Thank you.
Need to reiterate, I was tasked to find from the manager statistics, and there are no hardcore crime statistics out there. Uniform crime does not count this. This is the same information similar to what I just said. Those are surveys by law enforcement officials. I'm a law enforcement official, and I don't support it either. I really don't want to see it in Lisbon. My understanding of their security, it's like walking into a bank. So if they've got security like banks have, then good for them. But they're also targets just like banks and pharmacies are. So I don't support it, but there is no raw data, I think was the quote, that for statistical analysis available at this time from on medical marijuana dispensaries.
Any other comments from the public? Yeah?
Sorry.
I do have actually some percentages from the Mesa County, and this affects Colorado. 17% increase in drug-related incidents at the high schools. 5% increase in marijuana use and exposure, and this is in Adams County, Colorado, high schools from 2009 to 2010. LAPD reports an increase in crime around their dispensaries, 200% increase in robberies, 52.2% in burglaries, 57.1% rise in aggravated assaults, 130.8% rise in burglaries from autos near cannabis clubs in LA. Use of armed gang members as armed security guards was a big thing that was as part of this article, and you're welcome to look at that they talked about how some of the gangs, which I realize this isn't an apple-to-apple comparison, obviously, but as we know, I mean, drug use and incidences are on the rise, so I don't want it to ever become that, is that a lot of these drug-related gangs or sellers will use armed guards to protect and to go out and seek out people who are going out and picking up their, whatever you call it, stash, out your, whatever it is you pick up and however they call it, and they would then use some weapons and whatnot, rob these people for what they had just picked up. So I found some of the information and some of the stats and some of the increases on some of the information that I found to be quite alarming. So I'm not saying that any one particular person, and I'm not certainly indicating otherwise that our chief is supporting it. It's just some additional stats that I found out there. And the high school one, I think, is a pretty grave one. So just to follow up.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Richard?
I don't have a single statistic, but I agree with the chief. These places are targets. The problem is, you got a place where they got it, and some people can go get it there and others can't, so they decide they're gonna. The real common sense approach to this, I think, is out of the hands of the town council. It's got to be done at a federal level. So, but I do agree with the chief. I think these places are targets just because of the way the laws are structured, the way these places are set up, and I don't believe you're ever going to find one that doesn't have incidents, even if you can't link it directly to that, you know. So I agree with the chief.
Thank you. Any other other comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing. Excuse me. Next item, please, Twyla.
Is under consent agenda, Order 2010-142, to approve the minutes of August 3rd, 2010.
Would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I have a motion from Councilor Cody,
I'll second that.
a second from Councilor Palmerlo. All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Okay. Next item, please.
Under council orders,
Session.
Hmm?
We're going to go to executive session before we get into the agenda. We're going to do that first.
Nobody told me.
What I did today, that Mike was coming, we'd do that first, and that way, and then you go back and do that, so in case people have questions during this session.
Okay.
We talked about it, but maybe not.
All right, before we go on to the next item, I guess I'd like to take a few moments and go into our executive session to have a discussion with our legal counsel before we go into some of our orders and resolutions, so that we are appropriately informed on being able to answer questions as we go through the rest of the night. Is that okay with council? So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session under
That's-
Order 2010-149, Order 1 MRSA 4056E, consultation with legal counsel.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Rochelle,
I'll second it.
second from Councilor Cody. All those in favor?
order passed 7-0.
And we will return in a few moments.
I think you're good.
That's it?
I think you're all good.
Could take more than 10 if they started right with these ones.
All set?
Are you back to the agenda?
Okay, I'd like to bring this meeting back to order. Twyla, the next item, please.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2010-143, Sewer Department Budget.
Ryan Layton, our city engineer, will take care of this.
City, jeez.
Town engineer.
Town engineer.
City.
City of Lisbon.
In your package, you received the proposed budget for this year. I don't know if you would like to start with the revenue page first, or the expenses, or questions, or how you'd like to proceed.
Take us through it, please.
All right. Well, we'll start with the revenues, because this is a revenue-funded budget from sewer revenues, as well as from domestic users, as well as industrial, which we don't have much industry anymore, and septic income. We've continued to see a decline in domestic revenue, and we attribute it mostly to people just using less and less water with high, I say this every year, sound like a broken record, but with high, with low flow fixtures and whatnot, and in talking to the water department, they've seen the same decline in usage, and that results in not getting as much domestic revenue as we would hope. Last year's actuals were $833,000, and we had projected $860,000. Our industrial revenue was down $4,000, which we kind of anticipated not having as much industrial revenue with closure of Celotex and Rumble Mill. I mean, basically our one industrial right now is Main Electronics. Our septic income went from $90,000 to, or we projected it at $90,000. We actually brought in $108,000. That was as part of the headworks upgrade. We planned to bring in more septic revenue. And the fact that we don't have the industrial impact makes it so that way the septic revenues, we can handle it with our system. So our projected revenue, or our actual revenues from last year were $1,017,969. And based on that, we put together the budget with a bottom line of $1,017,753. So we tried to put it, basically right around what we projected for, or what our actual revenue was from last year. We've seen a steady increase with our septic revenue. We hope that continues to happen, but in case it levels off, we're try to stay at where we're at. So I guess with that brief summary, we can dive right into the proposed budget, which is essentially a carbon copy of last year for the most part. We did retire one lease agreement that we had, and we did not request as much for capital improvement this year to kind of cut the budget. We still tried to stay semi-aggressive with a pump that we wanted to replace at the the D&B pump station. And as I said, with the septic revenue, we've seen that increase is, in some respects, has been problematic with the equipment that we have. I mean, we went from 5 to 10,000 gallons a month to considerably more. And so we've had some growing pains with that setup, and we've budgeted some money to make some improvements there. And essentially everything else is pretty well the same, except for electricity. We increased some, and we've had one other minor increase was in the wage line, and that's primarily, I'm sure most of you know, Madden is retiring after 26 years, which is kind of difficult, growing pain there. And so she has, based on what I understand from payroll, what her retirement allowance is for unused sick time and vacation, there's a little bit of an increase there. And the sewer department went with the 1.75% increase as the rest of the town departments have done, just to stay consistent with them. And I'm not sure if you have any specific questions online.
On the equipment and improvements, you said the equipment was a pump?
We budgeted $15,000 for a dumping station, which would be for at the treatment plant. We spent $50,000 cleaning an aeration basin last year, and we want to make sure we don't put stuff in there. Basically, when we have problems with the septic receiving at the headworks, rather than take it down to Davis Street where we used to receive it, because the residents have appreciated not having septic haulers discharge in the residential area, they'll discharge to the aeration basins that we have. There's no screening there. I mean, the benefit of the septic receiving station we have in the headworks is we can screen out rocks and rags and anything else that comes in, because when they clean out septic tanks, whatever's there comes with it, so. And then we also included $25,000 to replace the other pump at the D&B pump station. We had an emergency repair last year we had to do, and we replaced the pump with a light pump that we intend to install. We saw our efficiencies increase, and just the quality of the pump that we use has worked out really well. That D&B pump station, which is, in case you don't know, is at the Farwell Mill parking lot, is one of the ones that we have the biggest concerns with the heavy rain, just based with, the inflow that we get from the Lisbon Village. We've been trying to nail down where we're getting rainwater that comes into the system, but every time it rains, the D&B pump station is...
We had an issue with that a couple of years ago, didn't we?
The D&B one seems to be our...
Well, we actually had to shut something off or whatever, and
We
pump
had,
around or something, I thought.
It was 5 years ago, there was an accident with Earth Tech when they were removing a pump, and it dropped, and it broke
That's right.
another pump, and we were there with emergency bypass pumping for
Right, that's
several
right.
months as we were getting parts and pieces ordered. Those pumps, history lesson, those pumps were European, and to get the parts, we had to wait to get them actually shipped over, so we've gone to something that's more readily available.
So those items you just described make up your 70,000?
Make up the 40, and then there's we budgeted $30,000 for the headworks plugging issue that we have. There's several alternatives that we're going to look at for improvements to the septic receiving station itself at the treatment plant. The dumping station I was referring to would be discharging to the aeration basins as an emergency location. And the other thing we needed to do was come up with a way that when we wash out our Jetta Vector, our sucker truck, our little sucker truck, that we can rinse it out and put it someplace else, because on occasion Public Works uses it, and we don't want them we don't want them bringing sand to us, which is primarily what they remove from their catch basins. Mm-hmm. But if it's not clean before they take it, then we run the risk of dumping contaminated materials where they can and we can't.
Do you have anything budgeted for line replacements, or?
Not this year.
No?
We haven't had any major...
Having any breakage, knock on wood, or something like that?
No, I say that now. We did have a sewer call out this morning, but I don't have any details from Main Street. I don't know what the final outcome of that was, but at this point, we didn't have anything that had risen to the level of replacement at this point.
So are we still cameraing pipe?
We are. What we did last year with our cameraing money was to actually try to find where we're getting the I&I from the village area, because, our goal was if we could find, we originally thought that there was a storm drain that was connected to the system. We found out that wasn't the test. Between smoke testing and cameraing, that wasn't the issue, and but we ran out of money to continue to evaluate, because the further we went, the bigger the search area got. We do have some ideas in terms of floor drains and drains from roofs, but to tell property owners that we need to remove that at this time when the system can technically handle it was kind of we didn't really want to face that battle at this point.
Don't blame you. Any other questions? Fern?
Yeah, just an oddball question. Is the sewer line, and actually down from the bottom, actually back a while was 152,000, down to 80, down to 12, and down to 0. Do we actually pay a sewer bill, or is that an expense?
That's the sewer. Well, what happened was when we changed our software and we combined all our account numbers, which was kind of a lukewarm reception to. That was a number of lines, capital lines, that each year we kind of list out the capital projects specifically. As in this year, I listed two, this $40,000 is really made up out of two projects and whatnot. That was maybe 2 or 3 different lines that kind of got combined to one. And that line, actually, the $80,000, the balance there is, the bottom part of my memo was the request to carry forward, because that's the pump station that we're currently installing. We've received it, and Longchamps will be installing the wet well this week, and the pump station will go in shortly thereafter.
The other question is you're saying pretty much that the septic income that we get, which actually this year was 108, out of the 108, it actually, you're looking at $30,000 to take care of the problems that generates? Is that kind of in a roundabout way?
That's a good roundabout way to put it, yep.
Is there a way that we could actually, instead of taking care of the problems it creates, use the money to actually put something down there for it to dump into that would kind of eliminate it? Is that what you're trying to do with it?
That's what we're trying to do with
Okay.
the, I mean, the issue, and it really, I mean, I say a problem, it's a problem from a maintenance standpoint and a labor standpoint. I mean, we have 4 full-time employees, and if they've got to spend 2 hours twice a day unplugging a pump, that's
Not really
the
efficient.
problem.
Yeah.
But and a lot of it, it's been, the building's been in place for, geez, it's been 5 years now, 4 years? And it's been a gradual build-up to the volume that we're receiving now. Originally, we didn't really have a big deal, but now, I mean, some days we're getting 12,000 gallons of septage. I mean, it's...
So the $30,000 isn't a labor figure, it's actually an equipment figure though, isn't it?
It's a placeholder for not really, several alternatives. There's bigger and, the Cadillac of pumps, there's grinders, there's putting in another channel where the septic haulers would dump into a channel. It would separate things out, but that's, it's just another piece that we don't know if we can fit into the footprint we have down there. I mean, it's...
But once that $30,000 gets expended, hopefully from years going on beyond this, we won't have to look at that $30,000
That's
figure.
Everybody's pump is better. There was one that we've seen YouTube video of that they send out for as their advertisement that shows the pump chewing up jeans and everything else. But then you talk to people that have actually used them and they say they're junk. So that's our problem right now, is trying to weed through what the best solution is for our issue, which is primarily sand and rocks and rags. The rags are really the biggest problem, because they just get bound up in the pumps that we have now, and that's it. We need something that can pump a softball. Would be fantastic, but we haven't found one of them yet either. They say they sell them, but
Not for $30,000.
we don't think we have the footprint.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the sewer budget? I'd entertain a motion to set the sewer budget at $1,017,753 with a sewer rate of $5.15 per 100 cubic feet, and allow the carryover of the remaining pump work on the pump station, which equates to what?
Yeah, I wrote it down. 67,244.
57,244?
67.
67, I tried.
So move.
I have a motion from Councilor Kraft,
I'll second it.
second from
With a
Councilor Rochelle. Yes, sir?
Just the understanding, because since the budget is actually pretty much the same, that the current rate of sewer is not changing this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, we had 50,000 more in there originally, but based on the revenues and just it being it's been so hard to pin down what our actual revenues are going to be each year.
But the 515 is the same rate as it was last year.
Correct.
So with basically, I'm just saying, the
Oh,
taxpayers
sorry,
should
yeah.
not see an increase in their sewer bill based on this.
Not unless they use more water.
Okay.
And it's everything.
Based on everything the same as last year, it will be the same, okay.
Correct.
Any other comments from council? Comments from the public?
Could I have that figure again?
The total budget is $1,017,753. The sewer rate is $5.15 per 100 cubic feet, and we're carrying forward $67,244 from this previous budget to support the remaining work on the DMD pump station.
Upland Road Pump Station.
Upland Road Pump Station, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Okay, next item, please, Twyla.
Order 2010-144, Property Assessed Clean Energy Act PACE Ordinance. First reading.
Okay, so this is our first reading of this Ordinance Energy Act. Is there comments from council?
I think basically, the only question I had was, this is pretty much a document that's handed to us that everybody, every municipality in the
Yeah.
state of Maine is looking at the same document, right?
That's correct.
It's not changed.
It doesn't impact the municipality at all in terms of costing us anything. It's really just allowing the taxpayers, if they want to make energy efficiency improvements to their home, there's a low-income or low-interest process that was approved by the state legislature, and all they have to do is contact a third party, and we're not sure who that is yet, but it's someone that's working with Efficiency Maine to sit down and apply for a loan.
So they don't come to the town?
They don't come
for
to the
this?
town.
With the exception on the Article 6, Section B, there is a requirement that the municipality shall adopt and implement an education and outreach program.
Yeah, that will go through our Economic Development Office.
Right, we talked about that before.
That's it,
So
yep.
there is still some work that the town or the municipality accepts as a part of this.
Yep, just a promotional thing, making sure people have that information.
Yep, good. So I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the first reading of the PACE ordinance.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Councilor LaRochelle and a second from Councilor Mason. Any other discussion from council? Comments from the public? Roll call, please.
Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Counselor Bowie?
Yay?
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Cody?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yay.
Order passed, 7-0.
Okay, and so we'll have this back before us next meeting for the final reading, so it can be adopted?
Yes.
Okay. Next item, please.
Order 2010-145, Moratorium Ordinance Prohibiting Marijuana Dispensary Facilities. First reading.
Would council like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we actually pass the moratorium.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Councilor LaRochelle and a second from Councilor Crafts. Any discussion from council?
I just had a couple of things that I wanted to say in support of maintaining the moratorium, and that being that there appears that there's no specific outlined provisions for regulation and/or oversight of these dispensaries. There's been some recent changes with narcotic drug prescriptions, and the DEA and the AG's office is having a really hard time keeping up with the demands that come along with those changes. There's a lack of adequate funding in many aspects of state government in regards to any present oversight, and so I think that this would be adding a burden to it. And we need to be mindful to bring this back around to look at it in February of 2011, because it's only got a 6-month or 180-day time frame for it.
Good point. Anything else from council? Comments from the public? Roll call.
Okay. Counselor Crafts?
Yay.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Cody?
Yay.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Bowe?
Yay?
And Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Order passed, 7-0.
Okay. Next item, please.
Order 2010-146, County Budget Committee ballot.
You should have in front of you the people that were chosen by representatives of District 1 to be on the ballot. Mike is the only one who is the municipal official, and you have to choose two other residents to represent the district in the county budget process.
Well, you can pick any of the three.
Any of the three, yep. I will make a comment that the Town of Green's representatives voted to support Mike as a municipal official, just so you know who made that motion. I went to that meeting, I can't make that motion, but it has to come from a municipal official, which is an elected official, and the Town of Green selectmen made that motion.
And I will tell you that Phil Morrow has been on the Budget Committee with me for the last 6 years and does an excellent job. He works for
Rainbow Credit.
Rainbow Credit Union,
He's the
right?
president.
President of Rainbow Credit Union, so he's a very good asset to us. Mike Gendron did serve last year as a replacement from the town of Sabattis. I'm not familiar with Mr. Honker, or whatever, I think that's it. Honaker. I'm not familiar with him from Turner. So,
Do we all vote individually, or?
no, this is a council vote, right. So council has to decide who they want to nominate and vote.
As a municipal official, I would go with Mike Bowie. No. Only choice.
And I would recommend Philip Morrow, just from experience of working with him.
Agree with that from the,
And then, I mean, it's up to council. I don't know if anybody knows the other two gentlemen. Like I said, I did work with Mike Gendron just last year.
I would
As a
say
fill-in.
he's from Sabattis, close to heart, so I mean, I would probably,
Yep.
if he wasn't as bad and close to us. It's always nice to have people close to your home to be making some of those decisions.
Is that agreement with council? So I'm hearing Michael Bowie, Mike Gendron, and Philip Morrow.
So moved.
So I would entertain a motion.
She
She
said
says so moved, yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'll second
I
that.
have a motion from Councilor Pomelo and a second from Councilor Larochelle. Any discussion? Comments from the public? All those in favor? Oppose? Abstentions?
7-0. Oh, 6-0-1. Order passed.
Can't vote for yourself. Okay, next item, please.
Order 2010-147, Public Works Contract Agreement.
Earlier on, we had agreed, the council had agreed to approve the Public Works Contract Agreement. The only thing that we had been waiting on is the agreement on the healthcare change, and that again is dependent upon, they voted to accept the proposal we made with Ultra Benefits. It's a cost savings to them and a cost savings to us, as well as we felt an improved insurance package. The other unions have not adopted that, so we are still in a holding pattern. The police unions are meeting end of the month with Ultra Benefits, as well as Maine Municipal, to do a comparison. And the general unit, we have not heard from their representative on where we are, but otherwise, the Public Works Union has agreed to all of what we've asked.
At this point in time, we don't take any action, or do we?
Well, we have
Oh,
to
you
make
have
a
to vote.
motion to
You
accept
have
the
to make it.
contract.
I would make a motion that we accept the contract that was agreed upon.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Councilor Larochelle and a second from Councilor Crafts. Any further discussion from council? Comments from the public?
Will we have to if the insurance is changed, is this something that would come back to vote again if there was,
No,
was there a
just-
difference?
No, the language that you have in front of you says, once it's reached, it converts over to the new language automatically.
Okay, I just want to make sure that,
Yep,
where that goes from there.
Can I make a comment?
certainly.
Under the difficult times that we're having, the people that work in Public Works, I'd just like you to know that if we could, we wish we could do better, but it's just not there. We certainly appreciate everything you do for us, and I wish we could reward you, but there's nothing there to reward with. Thank you for all you do, anyway.
All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Okay, next item.
Under other business, town manager's report.
Mr. Upham, Route 9 well has been drilled. They went down 200 feet. They got 3 gallons a minute, but it contained salt, so they drilled deeper, and they were still getting between 1 and 3 gallons per minute. We're still waiting for the test lab results to make sure we don't have salt in it. If we do, then we'll have to take a different avenue. We hope to hear this week. Ryan is on top of that. He's speaking with Mr. Upham, and we'll move forward once we have that information. All the water systems on the Upland Road and Route 9, the main lines have all been completed. Longchamps is in the process of connecting all those homes that were required and those, I guess, that weren't. The dispatch, I know we've talked about that quite a bit over the last year and a half. I sat with the new city manager from Lewiston and in discussions, kind of is in an upturn a little bit because the PUC, as I've spoken before, is doing some research and surveying of all the municipalities and throughout the whole state. We've expressed our concerns in our first report. We've also responded back to some questions they had of everybody, not just Lisbon and Androscoggin County. Hopefully, Ed Barrett, myself, the chief from Lewiston and Auburn, and the town manager from Auburn will sit down and look at what they're proposing. And hopefully it works out that we all can agree.
Excuse me, Steve, what's taking so long for a water test?
Excuse me?
What's taking so long for a water test?
It's in the hands of I guess, the people who are doing the testing. I think it's the state who does the testing, and we just haven't heard. I know Ryan spoke to Affordable Well Drilling today. They have not got a report back from them yet, and that's...
Furlough day on Friday and...
You know, this man has been very patient with us,
Yes, he has. There's
and
no
I
question.
think that, you know,
We are at the
we've got to
hands of...
expedite this a little quicker than this. This is ridiculous.
We are moving this as fast as we can. We cannot push the labs any more than we already have. We're pushing them every week to get results. We're sending out Affordable Well Drilling to analyze. Mr. Upham had some questions. They're going back out this week to try to answer his questions and look at the casing and to confirm the amount of water we're getting per minute, because he questioned that. So it's, we're expediting as fast as we can. We understand the issue and how fast we need to move on this. And
Has there been a Plan B looked into if this does not work?
if this doesn't work, then we're probably going to have to put some kind of filtration system in. That's the alternative. Unless we decide to drill deeper, but I'm not sure that's the answer. I'm not a geologist and I'm not a well driller, so until we have those answers, we will take it one step at a time. That's it for me.
I do have one question for you on the dispatch. I thought I heard that the Lewiston and Auburn was going to get together with the county to have a meeting.
That's on the
About their
15th,
approach.
yes. There's a meeting on the 15th. I will be attending that along with some other representatives of the smaller communities. They're making a presentation to the commissioners. We will be making a presentation, hopefully the following meeting. We could not get everybody there from our group to represent So we asked them if we could do it some other time. They're aiming to have some kind of recommendation for the Budget Committee before you guys get started on what their recommendation is going to be. So we're not sure what that is.
So do we know what Lewis and Auburn are presenting?
Yes, we do. Lewis and Auburn is presenting that they would like to consolidate all of the dispatch services into one dispatch, including theirs. And they're prepared to go take, I guess, everybody to task that if the county is going to dispatch everybody's police force and fire, then they would like theirs to be done as well. That's what I'm being told. Whether that's the case, I have not seen it come up in any public record of the two cities, but that's what I'm being told. So I think it's
So that would
important.
put the whole dispatching on the county shoulders?
Yep. And my conversations with Marie Jakes, who's with the PUC, I explained the funding mechanism and how I did not feel that it was an appropriate thing to ask of all the smaller municipalities to try to absorb a $2 million dispatch budget that LA has, and she understood that. I also explained what we had written to them from David's report of his committee, that the funding formula is only one issue we have.
Right.
That's the biggest issue, but we also have that we do not need the same level of service that LA does. They dispatch totally different because they're dispatching fire and all kinds of other stuff at once.
And I think that's a point that needs to be made at that meeting, right?
Yes.
Is if the county takes it over, the county is not required to stay accredited and to follow what Lewis and Auburn wants. If Lewis and Auburn wants to give up their accreditation and move their dispatching to the county can then elect to dispatch in whatever manner they wish.
That's correct.
So
And the group that met with Chief Brooks as the chair.
we don't necessarily have to have the same cost as what
That's right.
LA 911 has on the county side in order to provide the services. We got to make sure we get enough coverage to be able to dispatch for everybody, but it doesn't have to come at a $2 million budget
Absolutely.
for that.
And they're also looking at, a governance structure that, and I had told them, Mr. Barrett, that David's committee that had looked at a governance structure. They had looked at cost and how the Penobscot County and Cumberland County did things. Those are things that should be taken into consideration, and he agreed on the governance aspect of things, that it should be equal way across the board for all the towns who are going to be part of that. But I think we need to sit down, all of us, and have a conversation. I'm not sure it should just be LA and Lisbon. I think it should be some of the other municipalities as well who have concerns about that, and I will make sure I express that when I talk to them.
Okay, thank you.
To get back on the IT person, is that something that we could share services with the school?
I have talked to Mr. Green about that. He said that as it stands right now, he could use an extra half-time person to do all that he does. They have quite a few computers, and they have one person who takes care of all that, and he's actually got other staffing people doing quite a bit of their own IT work, so, because his one person can't keep up with it. We did talk about sharing that service. Right now, as I said in my letter, Ryan is working with the Technology Committee and trying to come up with some recommendations. We have a proposal on the table from Advanced Micro Systems that they are reviewing, and they have some different ideas than what Advanced Micro Systems has in terms of cost savings and what they feel the needs are. They were the original group that made the recommendation that we needed somebody full-time, and was a driving factor of moving John Paul up. At this point, I have discharged him based on the fact that right now we're just doing a contract with Advanced Micro Systems to fulfill the needs that we have currently. And whether they understand that may not be the long term, but until we get a recommendation from the Technology Committee, we haven't made any decisions. But I have talked to Rick and trying to close that gap as well, seeing if we could share, but that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next item, please.
Under audience participation, at this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium.
Do we have any audience participation? Okay. Oh, Art?
Have you ever known me not to say anything? Going back to Mr. Upham's well, I spoke with him last week, and he seemed to think that the recovery was only 1.5 gallons a minute. And so has that recovery improved a little bit to 3 gallons a minute?
All I can tell you is that Affordable Well Drilling is going to meet with him this week and finalize what they say the numbers are versus what he thinks the numbers are. So until I have that information, I couldn't tell you exactly what. We were told it was 3 minutes per gallon when they went 200 feet. We were told it's between 1 and 3 gallons a minute when they went deeper. He's been doing some of his own testing. I guess he's an engineer by trade. I don't know if he has a geology background. I leave that to the experts who are the Affordable Well Drilling. They've been in business for a while, and they know what they seem to be doing, so we'll let them determine that.
Also, he has 2 dwellings there. 3 gallons a minute, if it is 3 gallons a minute, is not going to be sufficient to supply two homes, 2 dwellings. Do you plan on another well for his other dwelling? He had 2 wells that were contaminated.
From my understanding, according to Affordable Well Drilling, that if it's 3 gallons per minute, that should be sufficient to handle both homes. But that's what we were told. Again, when they finally can determine what exactly the measurement is, we can work from there.
3 gallons a minute might supply 2 homes, depending probably on how many were living in each home. Right now, he only has himself and his wife in his own home. The other property is vacant, and if he wants to rent it out, he would certainly have to limit the number of people to 1 or 2 in order to be sufficient, because 3 gallons a minute would not supply a family of 4 to 5. I can't see that. I'm familiar with drilled wells, with dug wells and drilled wells. I was brought up on dug and drilled wells. So, the revaluation, tax bills are out. I've already had 2 people. Mine didn't go up too bad, but as I spoke at the last town council meeting, the way you were proposing on putting out the tax bills did not make sense. To increase it from 56 to 80% across the board for everyone. The older stock, the older homes didn't get hit too bad. But the newer homes did. I've had 2 people already call me as soon as the tax bills went out, and they were absolutely wild. And one gentleman, his taxes went up $800, and this is only at 80% of valuation. Okay, a question on the land revaluation. Did you use the new land revaluation on the new tax bills?
No, we did not. We did not use that. I put in my letter that we basically used last year's evaluation numbers, okay, not the recent land value ones, and we increased it all. Everybody is equally the same to bring everything up to 80%. We discovered prior to the tax commitment, and none of us were aware of this until we were trying to pull all the data together, that we had a shortfall. One from, we knew this was coming, was Knight Celotex. Knight Celotex pulled all their equipment out last year after April 1st, so that we still taxed them on that last year. we knew that that 1.75 million was going to be lost revenue because, or lost valuation. So we anticipated that. What we didn't anticipate is some of the other commercial customer who, there was a loss of value of 18 million. That is what drove the tax rate beyond what we anticipated. We did not know this. We asked for our declarations like we do every year, and we didn't get their declaration until the first or second week of August. They have been a good corporate client and business here in this community. We assumed that everything was fine. As we were looking through the data and trying to put everything into the system, because we did have a lot of change in personal property tax this year. We had a gain of over 6 million, I think was the amount, which was good, but we lost a total of around 18 million. So that is what has driven the tax rate up higher than we anticipated. It was something that this council had no idea. We did not know this until halfway through, probably near the end of August, when we're getting ready to tax it. Our tax assessor worked very diligently, trying to make sense of why there was a loss in value. He worked with the client very closely, trying to make sense of what we had on hand for information. We had quite a bit of information, but it still didn't make a lot of sense. So we had to commit taxes to get them out based on the numbers that we had. So that 18 million loss, if we had known that during the budget process, it would have been remarkably different. But nobody knew this until we got time to commit taxes.
I'm a little concerned when people start going to the Board of Assessment review, because the newer homes that are overassessed, when they start going before the Board of Assessment review to request a reduction in their taxes because their assessment is too high, what's that going to do to our taxes? I mean...
Well, the first step, my recommendation to all taxpayers is to come and see Mr. Dow or see myself. We're the only two that can answer these questions for them, to give them a fair and accurate evaluation of what their tax bill looks like and what their valuation is. It's based on the data that we had from our past valuation. Everything was increased the same amount across the board to bring it to 80%. That was the factor. We had anticipated if we were basing it on what our last year's values were and increasing everybody across the board, the taxes would have been increased equally across the board. What drives the tax rate, again, is what we spend and what we take in for revenue, but also the valuation. When you lose $18 million in value, that hits you substantially. And it affects your tax rate, and it affects your taxes. So my advice to all citizens who have questions about their tax bill, please come in and see us so we can sit down with you one-on-one. We will do it individually. Pat and I will take the time to look at your tax bill to make sure it's correct and make sure it's done. We do make mistakes. I won't say we're perfect, but we put the value in the system based on what was on the cards in our files, based on all that data. There are some that have changed. Some have changed because they've either added a garage or they've added decks. Those, you should expect to see an increase in your value based on that. Other properties that Pat has been out to look at, for instance, if they added a garage and he goes out to just inspect it to make sure it's completed, to get the measurements on it, he may discover that there's a deck that wasn't on the card, or he may discover that the house may not be as in good a condition as it said on the card. It may change because of that. We went through all of our trailer stock and individually looked at every one of those to make adjustments, because we knew some of those weren't correct. So, and some of how it was being valued and at what percentage. So we've tried to make as many adjustments as we can based on what we've seen. But the only way you're going to get 100% you have to visit every property individually, have a list and measure, so we can validate what's on the card is the correct amount. Now, I give you an example, something that we found, just, I'll just one. We had a house that was said to be a ranch. Well, and it had an addition or a deck put on it. Every year, we do this to every single piece of property. We take all our building permits, and we go after April 1st, and we go out and visit that property and validate that, yes, the deck is there, what size it was, to put a value to it. Well, sometimes when the assessor goes out, he'll pick up that, geez, that's not a ranch at all. That's a split level. So he will make an adjustment for that based on what we have for data. But again, to get 100% across the board, correct value, and this council has said this over and over again, you need to do a reval. That way you visit every single property, you get to rate every single property for what we're looking at, and what the people who own the house tells us, whether it's 1 bathroom or 2 bathroom, is the basement finished, is it not finished, things like that.
I do understand all of that, but, and I haven't been, of course, through all of the assessment cards or anything, but the older homes were, so many of them were valued so low, below what they should be. But the newer homes were valued probably pretty close to what the present valuation should be, or could be. And to increase those from 56 to 80% was not reasonable. I just can't see that was a reasonable, prudent way to do it. It just...
Every home that was on record was across the board valued at 56%. There were some that weren't, and some we've caught and some we haven't. Again, I cannot stress the importance of the taxpayer. If they question that, then they need to come see Mr. Dow or myself to explain why. If it has to do with something that they think is valued too high, based on what they have for information, then they need to talk to Mr. Dow. I'm not an assessor. I can explain to them how we derived the tax rate and what drove the taxes to go up. But I'm not an assessor, I'm not an appraiser. That's his expertise, that's why he's on staff, and he can do that. And we have seen a lot of people since last week, and I expect we're going to see a lot more. But I really encourage people to come see us so we can answer their questions, and if there are discrepancies, we will correct them. I mean, that's the only way we're going to find out. Because all we have to go on is what was on those cards and what we've entered into the computer.
And you had mentioned mobile homes, and I've talked to 2 people that have mobile homes, and both of them, the value has gone way up. One good friend of mine, very old mobile home, and the value on that has gone way up.
They need to come see Pat then.
That's what I told her.
Thank you.
David?
My question is, I mean, the percent we went up to 80%, are we still doing evaluation? Is it on the houses for next year as well?
That will be, Pat will go and visit homes as he has time to do that, and try to get as much as he can done. But one person can't do that. And we've tried to budget for, to hire and do an in-house reval. Pat's very capable of managing that kind of thing, but it takes bodies to come out and do all the list and measure. We think it can be done within a couple of months if we have the right number of people and have some people to do data entry. Staff here has been very good about helping get stuff into the system. When they had time, on slow times, we've had Twyla's person doing some data. We've had some people out front doing data entry. Kathy Malloy, our part-time assessor, is entering stuff all the time and making corrections. it's an ongoing process, and it needs to always be an ongoing process. It's not just after we do the reval, we just completely stop doing that. It needs, if you talk to Lewiston and how Lewiston does it, every year they're making adjustments. I've talked to them on how they do their process. In other towns I've worked in, the independent agents who work for the smaller communities, every year they're making changes. They may not do the whole town, but they'll do 25% of it, and then the following year 25%, until they get it all completed. So it's always changing with the market and with what people are adding for additions or making improvements and things like that.
So
But-
is some of the tax bills that have been given out already done in the evaluation?
No,
Nobody
please
has been-
understand, there has been no reval. We have not done a revaluation. We have made an adjustment to bring everything up to 80% of value across the board based on the information that we have in our database, which is what, prior to Pat or I being
Right, and
here.
this was to make the state happy as well.
It
to
brings
do
us
this.
up so we don't lose revenue. So it helps the taxpayer as well to offset the taxes. So I'm hoping that next year, depending upon the budget and what we're confronted with, Mr. Crafts is telling us that it's not going to be a very fun year next year, and I have a tendency to believe that. But we will address that when it comes. I'll put it back into my request for Pat's department and his request to fund the Liston measure. But we still have to, that's just the residential property. You have to hire a specialist to come out and do all the commercial property, and look at that and make sure that's on track. And Mr. Van Tynen, who did our land revalue, which we did not use this year, it should be current for next year. I don't think the market's going to change dramatically to make that shift, so hopefully we would consider hiring him to do our commercial appraisal work, but that's down the road, and see if we can fund it. But budgets are going to be very tight next year based on loss of value that we have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other audience participation? Okay. Next item, please.
Under appointments, Order 2010-148, Ethics Panel, alternate, one term expiring June 30, 2011.
So we have an appointment to make. So we currently have an open position. Is that the way I understand this?
Yes.
And its term will run until June of 2011.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is Mr. Tom Whitney.
In the audience.
He's in the audience with us today. Looks like he's well qualified. What's council's,
And make a motion that we accept his application.
so I have a motion for Mr. Tom Whitney for the ethics panel from Mr. LaRochelle, and a second by Councilor Crafts. Any discussion from council? Comments from the public? All those in favor? Welcome aboard.
Order passed,
Thank you.
7-0.
And you'll have Jody or someone get in touch with Mr. Whitney on all the details and stuff. I think one of the members is sitting in front of you, also on the panel, so I'm sure she can help you out as well. Okay, next item, please.
Counselor Communications.
Councilor Communications. Do we have any council communications?
I do. Harvest Festival is the 25th at MTM from 12 to 4, I think. We had it last year. It was a great success, and I guess they have Rick Charette coming this year with the kids. He sings kid songs. He's coming from, boy, I hope I get this right, sometimes in the afternoon. That's all I'm going to say because I'm not sure. That's it.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think this tax season and the tax bills this year, I think we failed miserably. I think we burdened our citizens of our town to a point where a lot of them are probably going to be leaving. And I feel sick to my stomach to think that we did this to our town, all in the name of not willing to cut a little spending. And I just feel that the people out there ought to know that we're going to be electing new officials this year. They ought to think about it before they cast their ballots. That's it.
Mr. Kraft?
Well, we did do a lot of cutting. But if we'd known the situation that we're in today, we probably would have done more cutting. But we did do a lot of cutting. It's an unfortunate situation on the tax, on all of us. Makes me sick to my stomach also. We need to, my recommendation is that we start looking at how we can start cutting today, because down the road, the picture gets worse. And so, I guess that's all I got to say.
On a different note, hopefully everybody's driving by the high school and seeing some changes, which is good changes. I think everybody was hoping to have that done before school started, but looks like they're working nights, but it is a big change. I've had many people drive through town and say, wow, you're actually working on your high school, which is kind of nice to see. So anything we can do to actually have some improvements with people driving through and is always a good thing, so.
Okay. Next item,
2010-150 to adjourn.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Councilor LaRochelle, a second from Councilor Cody. All those in favor?